to the cloud. And we're on. All right. So we'll get started. This is Everett DeMaurier. This is Rewiring Everett, and I am here with Jonathan Pritchard. And I'm very excited to talk to you. We were just talking. I have a whole 2 pages of questions I want to ask you. But we'll start with you with just doing a general introduction of who you are and what you do.
You got it. So let's see. You got my name right. That's awesome. So Jonathan Pritchard is my name. I have toured the world as a performer and mentalist, performed in Vegas and the whole 9 yards before transitioning into a consultant for Fortune 500 companies and just a whole lot of work around being curious about how people think and relate to reality, and then applying that to life and business. So that's kind of a lot packed into a couple sentences.
Now, when I first started reading about you and I started looking at your videos and that sort of thing, it reminded me of that 1970s movie, because you were this mentalist that became this consultant. It was like the group goes, go find me the world's greatest pianist and we'll turn him into a safecracker. Go find the best chess player and we'll make him a double agent. And that's why, because it's such a broad, I mean, has anyone else done this?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of one of those things of magic, and mentalism is pretty much my life's work, because it is the context for me to fully explore my curiosity about life and living and people and relationships and everything. So there's always a place for that in the world of mentalism. And it, to me, is such a powerful tradition that goes back before recorded history. And it's just kind of an honor to be the next in line of tens of thousands of years of tradition. And for most magicians and that kind of thing, it seems like that part of the job isn't receiving a lot of attention. So it's a lot about the tricks, and here's a new trick, and oh, I'm trying this routine. So it's kind of not as fully appreciated outside the world of magic either, because, you know, most people think, oh, magician, my uncle did magic tricks that were really stupid and I hated it, so I guess I hate magic too. So it's just kind of a personal mission to help communicate the rich tradition and value of thinking about the world in different ways that can enable you to do impossible things. But, you know, impossible is just another day at the office for a magician. So there's clearly something else going on here that most people aren't aware of. So that's why it started to branch out beyond just doing this on stage, and then sharing the techniques and ideas with people in a different way than just as a performer.
And you just said that a lot of folks that talk to businesses and that work with self-help pull data from the 80s and the 70s. But if you're a mentalist, you're pulling it from the court jester time. You're pulling it from the beginning.
Right. Yeah, that is, if we do want to talk about pet peeves, that is one of my biggest, which is that there are so many gurus selling thousands and thousands of people on the science of motivation, and I'm a motivational speaker.
Right.
And it just really irks me so deeply, because one, motivation is the worst strategy for achieving anything. If you wait to feel like doing something, well, then you're going to be waiting a long time, and you're going to lose to the person who just does what needs doing when it needs to be done. So motivational speakers on that front are a personal insult to me. And the second is they're talking about the psychology of business and the psychology of human decision-making. And magicians have been working with human decision-making since the first trick was created, because the magician has to understand what the audience member is going to be thinking based on their position in relationship with the situation, and just down to sight lines. Right? You could say, oh, it's all smoke and mirrors. But if your mirror is at the wrong angle for where your spectator is, there's no trick.
Mhm.
So you've got to have a really sophisticated appreciation of the theory of mind of the other person's experience in order to even design an experience for that other person. And that's the process of creating magic tricks that's happened since the first time somebody learned how to lie. Like that is so much cooler than, well, in the 70s we did a study with 20 college freshmen who didn't know anything, so here's world changing. Like, no, that was a janky research project that you're trying to milk for everything that's worth so you could get grant funding for next year. Like, that's what most business psychology networking stuff is, and it really gets under my skin.
And you know what's funny is you hit on something with motivation. That's exactly what we're trying to do as we start this out. We use an example of, early on where you're driving from New York to California, and all of a sudden the check engine light comes on, and you're driving, but you're in the middle of Kansas, and and then you see smoke coming out of the hood, and then you see the rattling, and then you realize you ran out of gas. So you hold on, you get to the next gas station, you made it, you fill up with gas, and you head back out without fixing anything else in the car. And then when you're broken down, a mile later, you go, that's what happens when I try to go to California. That's why I should never do, instead of fixing those things that are going to get you there. So yeah, so I'm so happy you said that, because we're the our philosophy is the same thing. So can we start out with the story when how this all began when you were 13?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, 'cause when I was a kid, 5, 6 years old, seeing a magician on the Carson show, like that's how old I am. That's how far back this goes.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's neat. Let me do that. So I was passively interested in that growing up. And when I was 13, I happened to get into a summer program that was just on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons, where my mom could drop me off in the morning and pick me up on the way home from work. And the guy who was running that summer camp was a retired street performer. He had been a clown his whole life, juggling and in clowning. So he was just a wealth of information about how to be in front of an audience. So I had already learned how to juggle from my dad and uncles, and had a couple magic tricks under my belt already. But he was the first person to really communicate the value of performing, and communicating at scale is really it. But I was super shy. Like, I was a really shy kid. I'm still intensely introverted. I have learned outgoing behaviors, but left to my own devices, I would rather not see anybody for weeks. That would be awesome.
So if I met you in the supermarket, it's not this persona.
Nope, not at all.
Really? Okay.
I keep to myself, because the stage is my office. That's my home. That's where I'm comfortable. That's where I have spent my life learning how to manage every single detail. And it's my world. Welcome to my mind. In the everyday life, you know what? You've got your own things to worry about. You don't have to, like, you shouldn't have to worry about entertaining me, right? So for
Hmm.
me, the day-to-day stuff, I'm actually pretty quiet and keep to myself. Much prefer to just observe, watch, and that kind of thing. Now, that's not saying that I don't have my bits of shtick. That's what I like to
Sure.
call kind of my outgoing routines. So if I'm in the checkout line, I have some shtick for that person, and anybody that I wound up dating. It's really entertaining at first, and then they're like, "You say exactly the same things every single time," and then they start trying to like undermine, because for
Right.
them it's really frustrating and boring, and they're like,
Right.
"Oh, he always says that." I'm like, "Listen, we are a team here, and if you keep cutting my feet out from under me, this is not gonna last very
Right.
long."
Right.
So yeah,
You're supposed to go like this with the
right,
hands.
exactly.
And
You're
so,
supposed to
yeah.
be the yes
Right.
and person here, right? Because to me, like, I'm fascinated by vaudeville and that whole world that most people don't know about. And it was the entertainment circuit before movies were really a big thing. So there were theaters all over the country, and there was a main kind of backer, the Orpheum circuit. So that was kind of like the Cinemark theater franchise, but Orpheum was that circuit. So these performers and entertainers did the same 12-minute act for 30 years as their whole career. They would do the same 12 minutes, and they got booked as seen. So that meant that they were contractually obligated to do it exactly the way the bookers saw it happen. If you change what it is that we saw you do, you're not getting paid for the rest of your circuit. So imagine being an entertainer who was doing the same 12 minutes, like Groundhog Day nightmare,
Right.
again and again and
Right.
again. But there's a certain level of appreciation and mastery you get from doing the same stupid 12 minutes for 30 years that you don't get from trying to keep yourself entertained by finding something different to do every day. So
Hmm.
doing the same damn thing over and over again is the only way you master it. So to me, having shtick that works is awesome because it helps people feel at ease and you know exactly where this conversation's going to go. But in a party dynamic or a social event, that's not there, man. So I'm going to be there more as a silent observer. And also part of it is, dude, you're not paying me to be entertaining right now. This is literally
Right.
my job. So
Right.
how about I don't do what I'm literally world class paid to do when I'm off the clock? So how about we talk about you and, oh yeah, your boring job. Right? It sounds harsh, it's awful, but it's like,
So you
listen,
got a new lawnmower. That's
right.
nice.
Wow, neat. Oh, so the
Oh, yeah.
kids are driving you crazy. Wow, interesting. Please, please put something stronger in my drink.
Now, so you've got your two worlds. You've got your Vegas world. You've got your traditional entertainment world, and then you've got this new connection that you've made. So is the Jonathan the same for both of those?
Kind of. In a way, it's the same process, different result for both of them. Because for the performing character, it's me. I tried the stage name Johnny Zavant, who is this punk rock mind reader.
That's
The whole
actually a
nine,
great name.
right? It's badass.
That's a great name.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you were the CEO of BP, would you spend a lot of money to bring in Johnny Zavant, mind reader extraordinaire,
Right.
or would you bring in Jonathan Pritchard, international consultant and founder of a training company working with Fortune
Right.
500 companies? Right.
Yeah. You,
So
you
it's
could go with
exactly
Johnny Pizzazz too. That's another good
Johnny
one.
Pizzazz. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Oh, that's when the Johnny Zavant gets played out. I'm switching over
Johnny
because
Pizzazz.
yeah, Johnny Zavant has a lot of felonies by
I'll be
then.
flipping through
So
channels
that's
going,
it.
I just stole that name. There
Son
he
of a
is. I knew he would
bitch.
take that name.
Right? And that's proof. The idea is nothing. It's execution is everything. Right? I guess that's what Thomas Edison would say. So yeah, it's the me day to day is actually pretty boring, quiet. I read a lot. That's the me. But on stage, you have a mission, which is to communicate a certain idea, feeling, or experience. And anything that detracts or distracts from that focus doesn't belong on stage. So the
Hmm.
fact that I'm worried about my cat or my car was rattling and boy, I really need this payday so I can pay those bills, none of that matters to anybody in the audience and therefore has zero, like it just shouldn't be on stage. So it's less being somebody different when you're on stage and more of being a lot of the right part of you for that experience. So you just
Hmm.
dial up the appropriate parts to 11 and you just don't include the parts that don't belong there. So the performer me on stage is it's me, just those wacky parts dial up to 11. And then as the consultant part, it's the very analytical, design driven. Well, what's your outcome? What's your intended effect? And now what do you have to work with? Now we design a strategy to make use of those resources. So it's kind of a combination of martial arts war strategy with human psychology and applied leveraging of the human imagination with communication skills. So it's just
Yeah.
kind of a full spectrum human beingness that you just bring the appropriate parts and leave the inappropriate parts at home.
Do you catch yourself when you get to, whether it's stage or whether you're talking to a Fortune 500 company and your water heater just broke and you just got in a fight with a friend and do you find yourself that when it's the end it turns back on? Or is it completely gone during that time?
What part is completely gone?
So you have all these things. You got there, you're late, you're upset, you got in a fight with someone, your water heater's broken, you've got all the stress, and then do you flip the switch and it gone? Or is it white noise that you just work through?
Part of it is, yeah, man, you flip the switch
Do you?
because y- the audience isn't there for your problems. And that's a lot of what entertainers spiral out about, which is if entertainers are there looking for self verification or self whatever, if they're looking for that kind of good job from the audience instead of bringing it themselves, they're going to spiral out because of the love of the audience. If you bring your problems to the stage and then use those as the way to connect with your audience, you're using the audience in a way that's not appropriate for the situation. The audience didn't sign up to hear about your problems. I mean,
Right.
unless you're a comedian and that's your shtick, right? But bringing your problems to the table there is very inappropriate and is extraordinarily counterproductive if your goal is to deal with your problems. So really, you've got those problems, you got those issues, and you know what? Getting to that stage is why I get paid to be there, right? Because I might have driven through a hurricane, or like, these are all things I've done. There are so many barriers to being a professional, but being a professional is you do what is required to do is what is required of you. So when you're backstage and your wife just left you or was cheating on you with your brother, who cares? It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
You just you go, that is something I'll come back to, but for right now, I need to focus on my audience and what I'm here to be doing. Take a breather, take a moment, and then set it aside, and there's no reason to bring it with you into that space. So the better you are at focusing on being a steward of the attention of the audience and radically focusing on how I can use my skills to best serve my audience or my client, that is a very good way of navigating reality, more so than trying to work through your problems on stage.
Yeah, and I could see it would be easier when you get there and you've got your routine and you start. How do you do it when your wife just cheated on you with your brother and you're sitting in a cubicle, or you're going, you're heading into a work, area, or you're doing that, and you've got all this ways to, how do you control that?
Part of my answer would be that for me it's kind of a ritual, which is showing up at the venue, whether it's a ballroom for a training session or a gorgeous theater for 3,000 people. Same difference. Show up early to do the work, and you've got your ritual of setting up your act and sound check and making sure all
Mhm.
the details are managed. It's the same thing. The backdrop changes, but it's the same process no matter where you go. So there's that kind of ritualistic setting apart. It's kind of like a sacred process of, yeah, the outside world is out there, but I am now in my cathedral where I get to perform my ritual sacrifice of my attention to set myself free to do this thing, right? That's kind of a lofty way of saying you just do it, right?
Right, right, right.
The second part would be, okay, you've got your cubicle and that kind of thing, But really what you're talking about is self-control and self-mastery, which is willpower.
Hmm.
And if you don't have a practice of practicing willpower, how in the world would you ever expect to exercise it and be able to use it? So, seated meditation, working out, martial arts, some sort of physical practice where it feels awful, but you say, I'm still going to do this. And even though that part of you inside is screaming, this is awful. Why? Please stop. Oh God, please stop. Every minute you continue beyond that is a minute that you're exercising your willpower.
Mm.
And then, and only then, once you've had practice with it within this structured environment, only then can you exercise it outside that context. So don't expect to be a master of your own mind if you can't even do it within that easy mode, right?
Mm.
Because a way I think about like meditation is, oh yes, I am fully present and in control, and oh, well, sitting in a quiet room by yourself with no distractions and all you have to do is sit there and stare at the wall is about as easy gets, and that is still one of the hardest things to do of anything you could ever try.
Right.
So then once you've got some practice doing that and you discover just how difficult it is to do, now you can try to maintain that same level of being as you move around instead of just sitting still. Well, now you can move around and still maintain that same level of self-control and willpower exercising,
Mm.
right? But now your annoying roommate is there and just really getting on your nerves and pissing you off. So now you've been able to move around and still maintain, but now you're in relationship with people you know and can't even control it. So how in the world are you going to maintain that control when you're out in the world dealing with strangers and traffic and your boss who doesn't care about you, right? So don't expect to have a high degree of skill in the most difficult situations if you haven't spent a single minute in the easy mode. So those skills aren't going to just manifest out of nowhere. It's not magic.
Right. Um, and you have a book just on meditation, correct?
Yeah, so kind of. So I put together kind of a video, just it's 30 minutes of
Mm.
me going through a PowerPoint, basically helping people understand and relate to a meditation practice without the excessively in-group lexicon language, right? Of the off-putting, overly specific technical terminology of vipassana and the mudra and all the things that are pointing to good things, but
Right.
the language is so obscure that it's part of the whole mystique is keeping it mysterious and this thing that no,
Right. Right. Right.
normal people
Right.
don't do. But really it's an intensely physical practice with a reason and logic behind it, and there are a lot of good reasons for the way that it is. It's just that so many people discount its value because of all the stuff around meditation. But to me it's like, oh yeah, meditation has been useful for thousands of years, but oh no, you're so special, you've got such unique problems that meditation won't help you.
Right.
Okay, sure. I doubt it.
All right. Let me ask you a loaded question because
Yeah.
I've tried the traditional meditation for decades, and I've heard of all people that and very successful people use this. I've never been able to break through that wall, but
Mhm.
there have been moments through monotonous things, mowing my lawn, doing something else, where all of a sudden it will go pop. The answer will just come. Is that a form of meditation,
I would
or am
say
I cheating and just trying to say I get the credit?
yes and yes.
Okay.
The monotony and the boringness is a way for your non-conscious mind to be free of directed attention so that it can freely associate and bring connection to unconnected ideas that you wouldn't have found without this boring situation.
Okay.
So strategic boredom is very useful for creativity and insight. So there's that part of it.
Strategic boredom. I
I,
like
I
that.
use I use long car rides for this,
Yep.
which is don't listen to audiobooks, don't listen to the radio, listen to nothing. And boy, this is really boring. And you're kind of forcing yourself to entertain yourself. And
Hmm.
with no external input, well, now you start creating output. So that's the strategic boredom angle to it. But
And if you tap into that, because I do the same thing, I don't have a radio on during those long car rides. I'll just think. If you tap into that and you tap into the monotony and you tap it, are you still getting some of the benefits of that? But it's not the traditional. You're not.
no, because that's not meditation. That's
Okay.
being bored. Meditation is intensely boring, and then your mind will try every single trick in the book to talk you out of doing this boring thing. And that's when your $1 million ideas start popping up. And oh, yeah, I should be doing this other thing. And oh, yeah, I forgot to call my mom. Oh, I've got to write that thank you card. Your
Right.
mind is trying every single trick it can possibly conceive of to talk you out of doing meditation because of how unearthly boring it is. The difference here, though, is you can't separate out the physical structure of the meditation practice. So the meditation practice is a relatively rigid structure that you have to conform to, and it is that process of conforming to that structure that within that boundary gives you the context to free yourself up from the tyranny of your momentary whims and oh, I should go do this, I should go do that, getting jerked
Hmm.
around by your moments, right? Only when you've had that intense structure long enough can that structure then set you free to be free in the moment. So that's why, to give an analogy, it's martial arts, kung fu. You've got very strict postures. You've got very strict sequences of postures. That is your system. And what that does is it forces your body into a particular alignment that is either correct or wrong. And you've got that external system to measure against. But the goal is to use the system to then free yourself up to express yourself in the moment in a way that's free from the tyranny of the system. So you're not a slave to the structure. It's the structure has now given you enough context to understand the fundamental principles it's trying to communicate to you. And then you go, oh, okay, the structure was there to build it in my being. And now that it's there, I can use the principles it was pointing to freely express it in a dynamic way in the moment. So meditation is sit down, shut up, put your hands in your lap, touch your thumb tips together. And if you're too tense and too rigid, your thumb tips will start pointing up because you're pushing and you're like, oh, it's so tense. And you realize that you've checked out of your body and your body is out of alignment. And now you've got a physical barometer of your mental state and your ability to be present in the moment.
Mm.
So you reset and your mind is now reset and with your body because, oh yeah, those two aren't different. And then you're too relaxed and you're slumping and you're leaning over and your thumbs are now in your hand because there's no structure there anymore. And eventually you go, oh yeah, I'm slumped. Okay, let me get back in to process. And it's that process, that structure that is the context for you to discover a lot about how you allow yourself to fall out of alignment with the current moment in moments outside the context of that meditation. So that's why I'm not doing meditation. I can't, it's not really working for me. It's none of that matters. I don't care. Just do it. Do the hard work. And that's the context that gives you the ability to reference every single area of your life.
And I never had anyone explain it that way. I mean, people explained, oh, when you get to that point in the meditation, this will happen. But I never had anyone explain it, oh, when you get in this situation, you can take the meditation with you and use it there with your cubicle mate or with this situation, because you can go into that's all right. You've sold it. I was hoping you say just mow your lawn more and you can
Right.
skip it.
Well,
But
yeah, but I mean, it's really a step-by-step process, and it's the ability to be still inside and not letting external factors disturb that stillness and clarity on the inside to maintain open awareness of opportunity and options and everything, right?
mhm,
So it's that stillness that you cultivate at rest and no motion, which is super difficult.
mhm.
Then it's the stillness that you maintain through motion and moving around your day. And then even harder is stillness in relationship with the outside world and not letting that context disturb that stillness that you're able to work on easy mode, right?
Now, do you get into talking to about meditation during with your corporate presentations, or is that something it depends on the goal?
Kind of, but not. I mean, it's difficult to separate these things out because there's no show me one piece of the universe that isn't connected to the others. So it's really difficult not to. However, you you have to speak in terms they will hear. So that's part of the skillful means kind of a thing, is putting it in a way that they'll hear it. So
Hmm.
that's why you're not going to talk about the universal mudra and that kind of thing, right? It's like,
Right.
listen, we're here to sell more widgets. So you just frame it in ways that they can appreciate. And we may not even talk about it directly, but for me, the reason why I bring up martial arts and kung fu and meditation is, to me, kung fu is meditation on steroids.
Mm.
It is the meditation for every context of life, because the pacifist way of choosing not to deal with aggression and violence means that you're ignoring a dimension of human experience. So if you're going to maintain that awareness in a very dynamic, uncomfortable experience, you better know what you're doing there. So that's the purpose of kung fu.
Hmm.
So it's very strict postures, dealing with dynamic situations without losing your present awareness of that situation. And that feeds into warfare, resource management, strategy, trying to get the most for the least engagement. That's business. So all of my business consulting is actually kung fu in disguise, which is just really proactive meditation.
Mm. Now, how did you, and I get all this and I get the connections between the two things, but how did you make that first jump? How did you get that first corporate client to say, okay, you've never done this before, I'll be serial number one?
Mm-hmm. In a way, you help them understand that they're not the first, because the process was, I mean, going all the way back to my childhood, growing up in Appalachia, right? Like mountain hillbilly. That's my pedigree. My
Mm.
dad worked factories my whole life until I went off to college, uh, that they didn't pay for.
Hmm.
Right? So it's like living in a trailer with a dad who's working at a factory, killing himself on walking around on concrete 14 hours a day, trying to
Mm.
provide for his kids. And some days it was, well, we don't have the money for lunch today, Jonathan, because your dad has to put gas in the car, right? Like, I don't envy those decisions that they had to make at all. right? Like it's not a rah, rah, rah. It's more of
Right.
a how tough that had to be for them, right? So I've had these conversations out with my parents, right? Just like, listen, thank you for loving me and being present enough to make me feel wanted instead of living out your frustrations of life, right? So that's my background. How in the world do you go from a trailer living kid on a dirt road to traveling the world? So in a way, learning that performing and being that entertaining monkey was my way out.
Hmm.
That was my skill set that put me in front of thousands and thousands of people. And choosing the path, or the path choosing me, I don't know which way it is, of the mentalism is a very, very unique subset of human psychology. So it wasn't just thinking about how this trick works. I've always been fascinated by why tricks work in the first place. So the realm of metacognition and thinking about thinking and understanding those gaps in our ability to make sense of the world that make magic tricks possible in the first place. Right.
Hmm.
So that's what I've been fascinated with forever. And being a mentalist and a performer and a mind reader have literally took me around the world and basically checked off every cool thing I have ever wanted to do. So the difference was one of the major places, the circuit that I worked was the college market.
Hmm.
So I was an entertainer for college kids. And so every college has an entertainment budget that every student pays into, and then they would pay entertainers to come every Thursday to entertain their students. Well, that's where I was making my money, was being that mind reader. So I would do my mind reading show, which is a 70-minute interactive mind reading show that works with the audience, makes them the star of everything, right? And then afterwards, I'd be signing autographs and posters and selling DVDs and that kind of thing. So then these college kids were asking me really cool questions, but mainly it was, I can't even imagine doing what you do for a living. And I've talked about this a lot because it really is the whole key to everything. They meant it in two ways. The first way is at the surface level. Boy, I can't even understand how you do those tricks. How do you
Hmm.
do what you do? I can't understand it. The deeper way is, I can't understand how you do your life, because you're not in a cubicle. You're not doing this thing that everybody that I've ever known has told me is the only way to do things. And here you come screaming through like a comet through my world, and I have no way to explain what in the world just happened. So I started talking to college kids about how I thought about college and why I went, and just had conversations with it. And then a couple years after those kinds of conversations started, I was getting emails from people being like, hey, thank you for taking that 10 minutes to talk to me. Totally changed my life. Here's what I did afterwards, and it's made all the difference in the world. I love it. And that was the moment where it really hit me that these ideas are powerful and not well known. And if I don't
Hmm.
talk about it, ain't nobody else going to be talking about it, because nobody else has followed this wacky path anyway. So that was the first peek into value beyond being a dancing monkey that really kind of put a crack in my world.
Hmm.
So I started thinking about it and going, man, okay, yeah, the process that I use to develop a show, what's the effect I want to happen? What would I have to do to make that happen? Now I know what to practice in order to develop the skills to make that happen. That's strategic planning. That is resource management. Oh, being able to use just my words to influence a room of 3,000 intelligent human beings, that's communication, persuasion, and influence. Oh, okay. Oh, communicating to strangers in a way to get them to spend their time to go to that auditorium. Oh, that's marketing. That's influence at scale. Oh, okay. Wow. Being able to get somebody who is sitting in the audience bringing them up on stage in front of those 3,000 people, being able to give them instructions in that highly uncomfortable situation that are simple enough for them to understand in order for them to do the things that I need them to do in order for this trick to work successfully so that they can look like $1,000,000. That's rapport building. That's networking. That's relationship building at a very high level of trust building instantly so that they feel like, you know what? If you had told me 2 hours ago that I would be on stage in front of 3,000 people, that sounds like the worst thing I could ever possibly imagine. But then have them be a stark raving fan because of how much fun that was. Like, that's magic.
Right.
Tell me you understand psychology better than that. Tell me you can do that, and then I'll take my hat off to you. But these business gurus talking about rapport building and NLP and all this, they don't get it. They can't do that. So that's why it hit me. I was like, holy crap, I've been doing this for 15 years for myself without fully appreciating how valuable it can be to other people. So to transfer to the corporate market, it was like, listen, I've been doing this for 15 years. I'm now teaching you how to do this stuff and how it works and the principles it's based on. So no, this isn't my first rodeo, because unless you can go to Vegas and entertain that audience, yeah, I've done this more than you.
And not to bash these self-help guys, but it's a great point. You can have someone who's very successful at telling you how to be successful. And they've built this entire empire on telling you how to be successful, where you were off doing it, and then you were pulling off the nuggets of wisdom and going and say, hey, do this. That's genius. It's
Right.
absolutely. And I think the thing that would make me crazy with a couple of your videos I saw is you say, hey, here's this trick. Oh, by the way, I don't have any special skill. It's trick, which sort of really cheeses you off, because I'm trying to figure out how you did it.
Right. Because to me, that's the only honest way to do it.
Right.
Because in one way of cutting it, it is magic. It is skill. It is something that I've worked a lifetime to be able to do. I'm just saying that it's not a gift that lets you off the hook of explaining it away as something that you would never be able to do. So it's not that I'm just pulling one over on you. It's that I'm not allowing you to explain it away as I have a gift, and that's why I'm successful and you're not. Because that is the ultimate get out of jail free card for the audience to think, oh, Jonathan was born with this gift, I wasn't, and that's the reason why none of this will work for me. No, I'm not going to give you that out. This is a skill set that anybody can learn if you dedicate your time, effort, and energy to it to get better at it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I don't claim to have the mojo, or I'm psychic, or any number of false claims. So it's more about not letting my audience think that, oh, okay, I'll never be able to do that, and that's why I shouldn't buy his book.
Great point. Yeah, great point. You one of my favorite stories that I've heard you tell is about working at Universal Studios.
Yeah.
And demonstrating the trick. Can you talk about that? That's an amazing story.
Yeah. So my college experience was, I have a degree in painting, and my mentor is James Randi, who had $1 million challenge to anybody who claimed to be genuinely psychic. So every summer in college, I worked with him designing testing protocol for people who claimed to have the mojo.
Wow.
So that was my college master's experience when I was still in an undergrad learning to paint, right? So that was my college experience. As soon as I graduated, I moved down to Orlando to work at a magic shop that was opening up at Universal Studios. And it wasn't in the outside part of the park where anybody could go. This was inside the park, where you had to buy a ticket to get into Universal Studios, and that's where we were. So it was a small group of us, maybe 3 people would be working a day, like 3 magic demonstrators. And people have been saving for their entire life to go on vacation, to go to Universal Studios, to ride the roller coasters, and that's what they're there for. They aren't there to watch stupid magic tricks,
Mm-hmm.
but they did. So they would come into the shop where we would do a magic show 3 times an hour, and basically every single trick we did, a 7-year-old kid could pull it off. So everything that was in the show was really an advertisement for people to buy it. So you're demonstrating this magic, and demonstrating is different from performing. So the guy who owned the shop would always get on me. He's like, stop performing, demonstrate. If you make it look
Mm-hmm.
too good, they won't believe that they can do this. But if you look like you don't even know what you're doing and it's still working, they're going, oh, okay, maybe my 7-year-old snot-nosed kid could actually do this, right?
Right. Right.
So you can't make it look too good, but good enough that they would want to buy it. So people would go, oh my God, are you sure? Are you sure my kid would? But I don't even think I could do this. So there's one trick that was my favorite for this moment, for the moment where somebody goes, I know that you're the authority on this because you're the one who knows how this works. And I know that you're telling me that I could do this, but based on what I'm seeing, it looks impossible. And therefore I don't think I could do this. For that moment, you go, come here, kid, like 5-year-old kid. You go, all right, cut the cards, turn that card over, and it's that guy's card. I'm like, that 5-year-old kid who doesn't know how this trick worked just did the trick. So are you telling me that you're less skillful than a 5-year-old kid? And they're like, all right, yeah, that's a good point. All right, yeah, I gotta have it. So they'd buy the trick. Part of it was if the park wasn't busy and we had enough time, well, then we would teach people how the trick works. So you buy it and you go, listen, man, when you buy the trick, you're not just buying the cards or the sponge balls. You're not just buying the rabbit. You're buying the secret that makes it all work. And once you know, there's no giving the secret back, so no refunds. Mm-hmm. And they're all like, yeah, totally cool. I get it. Yep, makes sense. So then they buy the trick. You tell them the secret. And then they go through the 5 stages of grief. That's straight up what happens.
Oh, yeah.
Denial. There's no way that happens. Bargaining. It has to be something else. It has to be more clever. Anger. I bet you think I'm an idiot because I paid $50 for this stupid piece of crap. Give me my money back. Hey, buddy, remember, no refunds. Right? Then there's depression. I just spent $50. I could have bought a t-shirt for $50. And here I got the stupid deck of cards you sold me, you piece of right? And then finally acceptance of, oh, but you know, that is kind of cool. So you're telling me like this will work. So they're burdened with the information of how this works. And their mind instantly can't imagine a world or a universe where they don't know the secret. And suddenly their understanding completely reframes in alignment with the new information. So now they can't imagine not knowing how the trick works. And since they will no longer ever be fooled by this trick, they now measure everybody else from their understanding and can't imagine why anybody else would ever be amazed or entertained with this stupid trick that they just learned. So in a way, magicians keep secrets not for their safety, but for yours, because you haven't learned the skill of understanding and seeing through the limits of your knowledge. Like it's terrifying to realize how deep that goes when you learn a new piece of information and forget the wonder of learning it in the first place, and the power of how simple solutions can be. So yeah, people definitely are going through the 5 stages of grief for their amazement and wonder. And it takes a certain kind of something for a magician to want to share that with the world. And the real reason they're keeping their methods secret is to preserve that one glimmer of hope and amazement about the nature of magic and reality, because otherwise most people can't handle it.
And why is it? Why do they go through those stages automatically? Is it insecurity? Is it what's the no?
No, because it's most magic is very simple. It is very simple. The magic of magic is the insight of how your mind works, and why these very simple techniques are so powerful and effective. So when you start seeing through the protective blinders of I'm very smart, I am so smart, I'm a
Mm,
very capable human being, and then you're totally duped and fooled by this thing that is so simple a 5-year-old could do it, that is a damning indictment of you're not so smart, you're not so clever as you thought you were. So it is a reflection that sees through the high opinion you have of yourself, of how competent you are as a human being at navigating reality, right?
huh.
So it's kind of a, ooh, that's a powerful mirror, man. Like that's a portal into understanding real human nature that not everybody wants to see, right?
Right.
Because it strips away all the fluff, and you go, look, man, you're real simple here. Like we got real simple processes, and the most amazing magic happens because we fool that one simple process more so than they're super skillful and all the things that go into it.
If for some reason it reminds me that you're watching the movie you've seen 1,000 times, and you know this is the scene the guy dies, but part of you is going, well, maybe something will happen this time, even though you know it's not going to, but you're
Mm-hmm.
still hoping that maybe something will happen and yeah, he won't go in that
Exactly.
room. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
So this is interesting stuff. Now you also talk a lot about confidence. And one thing that I've noticed lately, we just did a short video, is I'm looking at my confidence when I was 25 and my confidence at 55, and I noticed at 25 my achievements were here, but my confidence was through the roof, because I was constantly looking at all the things I'm going to do. If I'm going to do it, then I've claimed it, then it's real. And then when I was 35, my achievements were up a little bit, but my confidence was actually down, because I'm starting to look back a little bit. Oh, if I had only done that when I was 27, if I only done it. Now I get to 45 and my achievements are here, but the confidence is actually crashing. And by the time I'm 55, you've got these actual great achievements, but there's no confidence because most of the time is looking back. Can you comment on?
I would say that what most people frame as confidence is hubris.
Mm,
And, sometimes you need unreasonable hubris in order to delude yourself into believing you're capable of doing this highly unlikely thing in the highly unlikely event of actually being able to pull it off. So
mm,
it takes an unreasonable amount of confidence to delude yourself into even attempting things you've never tried before if you have the
right.
single chance of doing it in the first place. So I kind of like that strategic self-delusion, right? It's cool. Go for it,
Mm,
right? Just keep your eyes open to what's actually happening as a consequence of that hubris. Confidence for me is the ability to say, I can do this. At the very least, I can at least get through this. So your confidence about what it is you can make it through, that world gets smaller and smaller because your area of expertise gets smaller and smaller, even though your understanding gets deeper. So the older you get, the more you appreciate just what goes into competence. And
mm,
the more competence you develop in your narrow area of expertise, the greater your confidence of knowing what you're capable of doing. and realizing that, yeah, maybe I can't do all that other stuff. So your delusions are burning away through the fire of experience of,
Oh, interesting.
oh,
Okay.
okay, I now am narrowing my scope of what I'm going to spend my time doing, right? So
Hmm.
to me, it's confidence is downstream of competence, and the narrower you focus your skill set, the greater your confidence is from that.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I know we have scratched the surface here. I haven't even picked up my sheet that I made for you. Um, but the one thing I want to close with is what we're trying to do is we're looking at, instead of a lot of the things that you talked about, instead of just filling the tank with gas and enthusiasm and reading these self-help books and charging ahead, we're going back and trying to fix the codes that we've programmed ourselves for, and fix the parts that are holding us back. I know that's a lot to dump on you, but in closing, what comment would you give for anyone trying to do that?
Part of it is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of the stuff has been figured out already, and there are
Mm,
people who are good at it, and you don't have to go it alone. And the more alone you try to do it, the more difficult it's going to be for you to be successful. So to me, most of any success I could ever have or point to is always the direct result of finding a mentor who is highly skillful at what it is I wanted to be better at, and make myself valuable to them in whatever way was useful to me and them, in order to learn directly from them. So
mm,
in this digital age of all information is available at any time, instantly, the mentor model still has a lot of value. So understand that you're not alone. This isn't the first time anybody's gone through this situation. And there are people who have been through this, have been through the same challenges, and received a lot of insight and support from their mentors. And even though if you're in a position right now where you couldn't possibly believe that there would be people who think and behave that way, there are. And they
mm.
deeply, deeply care about you and setting yourself free from the worries that are holding them back from being able to be the person they're in this universe to be, right?
Mm.
So don't discount the power of mentors wanting to invest in you just to help you, because it's meaningful work to them even if you can't pay them the dollars, right?
Right.
So to
Right.
me, a lot of it is find a mentor who is skillful at the thing that you would like to be skillful at, then shut up and listen when they try to explain stuff to you. Your job isn't to argue. Your job isn't to debate them. You think you're just trying to ask questions to understand better. You're not. You're arguing, and that's your old way of seeing the world, fighting to stay alive, because the instant you realize you can leave it behind is the moment it dies. So you arguing with somebody who's so clearly more skillful than you is just that belief fighting to survive.
Mm.
So just understand that that's what that process is, and let go of it. That's it. So easy, right? That's
Yeah.
no brainer.
Yeah, and what's great about the mentor model too is you don't have to find one person, right? You don't have to find one person that's going to fix everything. You can find a person that the mentor in this part, and a person that you mentor in this part. You could have a dozen different mentors in different parts of your life.
Yeah. For me, I love playing counterpoint to that though. Like I love playing counterpoint to that, which is kind of like pick one flavor of meditation. Because if you try to do 7 different flavors of meditation,
Mm,
their strategies for achieving or unlocking the understanding could be completely separate. Within the framework of that complete system, it all makes sense and is internally logically consistent and will derive results. However, the internal logic of 2 different systems will be at odds with each other. So sometimes, from a beginner's perspective, trying to chase 2 rabbits means you're not going to catch any of them.
good
So
point.
if you start measuring what's useful from the mentor based on what you think is right, you're not a master yet. You are not there yet, and your ability to discern what is good for you has not been cultivated yet, and you will still be making those decisions based on the current framework that hasn't been working for you. So the more of these you try to input at the level of understanding you're currently at, you're actually going to multiply how long it's going to take you to fully understand why your current way of thinking isn't serving you so well. So I just want to put that on the plate because both are true.
No, it's a very, very good point. Yeah. It's also you did a very nice way of saying you were wrong in a very nice way.
But again, it's wrongness is the context of usability.
Right, right, right.
Me, a good illustration for that for me is coin flips. If you've had a decision, you're like, oh, I could go this way, I could go that way. You flip a coin, it comes up heads, and in that exact moment, you go, no, I wanted tails. Like, explain that to me. What is going on? Like, I want to hear like how you would explain that process.
Mm-hmm. That I probably I don't want to make a decision. So no matter what it was, I would have chosen the other one.
I like that. I like that too. So like here's my angle to it, which is as you're trying to decide, you're using your mind to imagine potential outcomes. Those aren't real. They're imaginary. They're made up. So every imagination you could have for, you also can imagine another against. Since they're both equally not real, they don't add up. They don't stack up. So that's why there's no clear-cut way. However, when you flip the coin and commit to the answer, it's an external situation. Your non-conscious mind doesn't understand the difference because its whole experience is mediated through the mind of your perceptions and conscious awareness of it, and then gets filtered through. So an external situation is being intermediated by your eyes and physics of flipping it and all that kind of stuff, right? So it is a real external happening. So then when it comes up heads, that's a real physical fact. You respond to it as though it's real. And in that moment, you have your real emotional response to what's already happened. That's your access to your non-conscious preference for tails. So it's a path to understanding how you already felt, but couldn't access from your conscious imagination. So when it comes up heads and you instantly know, oh, nope, I actually wanted tails. That coin flip is not wrong. It is useful for you to understand yourself.
Right.
So to me, it's skillful to think in terms of usefulness more so than it's right or wrong, because there are very useful wrong things.
That's a great line.
Yes,
great line.
Thank you. I want to free myself up from right and wrong and do what's useful to do good in the world.
Yeah, I was reading something the other day on a mathematical formula that says there's always a point in between. So instead of something being, it's either right or left. If you're heading from here to here, then you go in the middle. Well, then here to here, there's another middle, and there's another middle, and there's an infinite number of middles. So we always think, well, it's got to be black, or it's got to be white, or it's got to be, there's only two ways, but there's infinite choices to be made.
Right. What is that? That's Zeno's paradox, which is
that's exactly
no matter
right.
how far away you are, you could always divide by 2. So you could always half it. And that really is the seed for calculus, which is finally proving that all of those divisions add up to 1.
You've impressed me for the last hour, but you just that was just over the top. Yeah.
Thanks.
Zeno's paradox. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Jonathan, thank you so much. We just skimmed the surface, but I have a very thin understanding of what you do, but I get it, I think now. more than I did when we first started talking. I wish you the best success. I think this is amazing what you're doing. I think there's solid success behind it, which I think is really, really unique. Instead of, teaching a sales seminar, you're taking the entities that worked here and you're moving it out. It's just phenomenal. I was very giddy when you emailed me back and you agreed to do this talk. So it's I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts, and also to you, awesome sauce, for dedicating your energy to the project of getting after it. So
Yeah,
my hat's off to you there too.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Let me see if I can put on my old man glasses.